Morning. Good morning. Good morning, friends. I like the lively environment happening. I'm the Reverend Meredith Barber, for folks who may not know, and we are so excited to welcome you to our worship service this morning. We're glad to have you with us today, whether you're joining us in person or virtually, whether you're here for the first time or whether you've been here for a long time. Here at Horizon, we welcome people of all faiths and of no faith in particular. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your journey, you are welcome here among us. So I want to let you all know that we are going to be having our annual congregational meeting after our worship service today. There's a couple of things I want you to know about that. So after our worship service ends, I'd like you to check in, I believe with Amy Porter, check in out there to certify a quorum. So you'll sign in, then you're gonna go get your amazing lunch from our coming of age fundraiser. You're gonna do that, and then you're gonna come right back here and we're gonna start promptly at 11:45 to make sure and get you all out of here on time, okay? All right, and with that, let us deepen into the spirit of worship.
Good morning. My name is Menica, and I welcome you to worship this morning. Our first reading is entitled Wholeness by Sharon Wiley. We speak so often of brokenness in religious life. Let us speak today of wholeness. You are welcome here, all of you, every part of you, beautiful just the way you are. Here you do not need to be something more or something less. No holding back, no hiding. No exerting yourself, no trying to do more or be more. You have inherent worth and dignity, nothing to prove here, nothing to prove to me or the person sitting next to you or to the children or to anyone. You don't have to try to be witty or more quiet or more outgoing. You are beautiful, every part of you beautiful, just the way you are. You do not need to change anything about yourself to be welcome here. Your skin, your hair, your belly, your limbs, your face, all beautiful just the way they are. You are extraordinary, each and every one of you different from each and beautiful in your own way. Breathtaking. Let us worship together.
Our chalice lighting today comes to us from the writings of the Reverend Dawn Cooley. She writes, "We light our chalice this morning, grateful for the love that we experience in this beloved community. May the flame light the way for all who seek such abundance." I invite you to join me now in our affirmation found in your order of service. Love is the doctrine of our church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in harmony with the earth, thus do we covenant together. Either in body or in spirit, and join in singing our opening hymn.
So this will be done as a round. So we will sing it through once all together, and then this half we'll be singing with Elaine. This section here we'll be singing with Bill, and then I will be with the choir. Okay. Come, come, whoever you are, wonder, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, get together.
Can you all hear me with this? Okay, yes. So today is a special day in the life of our church, a day when we welcome new members. So if you are a new member, if you have recently signed the book, or if you'd like to join our church today, I invite you to come forward. Hi, folks. Come on up here. Let's form kind of a semicircle facing the congregation. Okay. Come on. There's room for everybody, I promise. Okay. It's a good problem to have. I'm going to move over here. So it is one of the joys in the life of a congregation to welcome new folks who want to serve our mission alongside us.
We haven't practiced this. Okay, so all of you have already joined us. At this time, will all those who wish to join the church community and who are in sympathy with our mission and who want to support it with their spiritual and financial resources, please come forward. We are honored that you have chosen to become part of our religious community. We value your participation, your thoughts, and your feelings. Welcome to our church. May we be worthy of your trust.
When you signed the book, you agreed to the rights and responsibilities of membership that include regular attendance at worship, voting in the congregational meeting, making financial contributions, and contributing talent and time.
So I'm going to pause in our ceremony and interrupt for a moment. So we have some gifts that we'd like to give all of you. We're going to give you the Unitarian Universalist Pocket Guide, which has readings and information that you might need, and also a flower. So now I'd like to invite our new members to read their part in the ceremony. It's printed on your little green thing. Okay, I'll read it with you. Make it loud. Okay. We join with you as members of the Horizon Unitarian Universalist Church, confirming our covenant to uphold the rights and responsibilities of membership. We commit to be in service to the mission of this congregation, to grow spiritually healthy people who promote love and justice in the world. We willingly enter into the covenant that binds us together as a religious community, honoring each other wherever we may be on the path to becoming more fully human. Now I'd like to invite the members of the congregation to read their part. Welcome you into membership in our congregation. As members of Horizon Unitarian Universalist Church, we join together to challenge and nurture one another in our efforts to speak honestly, to act with compassion, to love without prejudice, to live with integrity, and to respond to the demands of justice with courage. We pledge to support our church as we are able, with our hearts and hands, our talents and resources, that together we might become a more effective instrument of service, a voice for liberation, reason, and tolerance, and a community in which we can celebrate all that life brings to us. So we give thanks today for all of these new faces among us, for their voices and for the gifts they will share with this community. May we nurture and love them fully. Amen. May all return to your seats. Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations. We come now to the time in our worship service where we share our gifts to sustain the ministries of this church. I invite you now into the spirit of generosity. The offering will now be joyfully given and received. Sorry, friends. Our children, let them go to their classes. Sure. Okay, now time for offering. Thanks everyone. So our first reading this morning comes to us from the writings of Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. So if you haven't heard of her, we're going to have just a really quick history lesson this morning. Harper was a Black woman born free in Baltimore, Maryland in 1820, and she eventually became a famous writer. Her works are some of the first published by Black women in this country, and she got her start as a poet, primarily publishing in anti-slavery journals. Harper was an activist for abolition and for women's suffrage, notably encouraging white women in the suffrage movement to expand their activism to include Black women, always pushing for intersectionality. After the Civil War, during Reconstruction, Harper, who had always lived in the Mid-Atlantic, moved to Mobile, Alabama to support and educate freed people. She was active in both the AME and the Unitarian churches, and her funeral was actually held at the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia. You may recognize the title of one of her famous speeches entitled, "We Are All Bound Up Together," delivered at the National Women's Rights Convention in 1866, in which she articulated the idea that what happens to one of us happens to all of us. So with that, here is a poem she wrote about the way the Bible and religion were used as a defense for the evils of slavery during her lifetime. And this is some important context for what we'll talk about later in the worship service. Take sackcloth of the darkest dye, and shroud the pulpits round. Servants of him that cannot lie sit mourning on the ground. Let holy horror blanch each cheek, pale every brow with fears, and rocks and stones, if ye could speak, ye well might melt to tears. Let sorrow breathe in every tone, in every strain ye raise. Insult not God's majestic throne with the mockery of praise. A reverend man whose light should be the guide of age and youth brings to the shrine of slavery the sacrifice of truth. For the direst wrong by man imposed since Sodom's fearful cry, the word of life has been unclosed to give your God the lie. Oh, when ye pray for heathen lands and plead for their dark shores, remember slavery's cruel hands make heathens at your doors. Here ends the reading. I invite us now into the time of meditation and prayer that we share. We'll begin with a moment of silence, hear the joys and sorrows of our community, hear a spoken prayer, and then join in our responsive hymn, Spirit of Life. I invite you to join me now in a moment of silence. Loving God, Spirit of life, mystery in which we live and move and have our being, draw near to us this morning and hear our prayers. We give thanks today for the chance to be together with this group of people who care about each other and who care about this community. We give thanks for the chance to slow down, to breathe in deep, to let our minds wander. We give thanks for the bumps in the road that have led us to this place, and for new faces among us, ready to join in our mission to serve the world. Spirit, our world needs us to serve this mission, to welcome, love, grow, and serve, now more than ever. We are living in a world where some among us do not have enough for our babies to eat, where they do not have formula, where politicians seem determined to make basic human needs more and more difficult to access, where white supremacist violence still poses a daily threat to those marginalized. It is enough to make one stop and wonder, what are we doing? And yet, my hope is renewed when I look around and see faces who have worked for justice and for change for longer than I have been alive and are willing to keep going. When the weight of the world can feel like too much, when problems seem too big, I always try to make things smaller, to turn to my little corner of the world and wonder, what can I control? What can I do? Spirit, help us to remember that the way forward is to help one another, to remember that together we can do so much more than we can with just our one voice. For all these things and those left unspoken in the silence of our hearts, we pray. Amen. I'd like to share our joys. We want to wish Menika's dad a happy 80th birthday. We also want to celebrate with Elizabeth and Diana their new grandbaby. So now let us remain seated and join in singing our responsive hymn, number 123, Spirit of Life.
Our second reading today is entitled, Where There Is Beauty, by Reverend Karen G. Johnston. What do we do with beauty, or joy for that matter, in the midst of tragedy, of violence and cruelty? What do we do with the living? Give each other their due. Do not lose ourselves in any of it, but find ourselves anew. Where there is beauty, amplify it. Where beauty is hidden, reveal it. Where beauty is ruined, restore it. Where beauty is absent, create it. This will be our gift to our aching world. Here ends the reading.
So this month we've been talking about nurturing beauty as our monthly theme. And we've talked about a lot of different things. We've talked about the beauty of rest. We've talked about our bodies, and we've wondered about why we might find certain people more beautiful than others. We've celebrated the beauty in each other with flower communion. And today I'm taking us in kind of a different direction. There's been quite a bit of angst lately about us as Unitarian Universalists living in the South. How will we, as religious liberals, continue to live in these conditions? Who will want to come and join us in our work and our fight? This is real and valid, and there are times when I feel that way too. But today I want to delve a little deeper and maybe offer another perspective. Some of my first exposure to Southern religion was through my grandma Mary, my dad's mom, who we call Mima. I was born in Fort Smith, Arkansas in the early 90s, and at that time there wasn't a UU congregation near us. My mom was not yet a minister. In those early years, my idea of fun was sleeping over at Mima's house on Saturday night, and of course, going to church with her on Sunday morning. We went to her Methodist church with dark wood paneling and stained glass windows, with coloring pictures of little lambs and a painting of white Jesus framed in the corner. Sometimes I would go to Sunday school, but mostly I wanted to stay with Mima. She would give me those little strawberry candies, I call these grandma candies, to keep me quiet, and I would stand by her side and help hold her hymnal. My grandma loves to sing. She still does at 95 now, and I will always cherish the memories of her low alto voice moving lovingly over the familiar notes. This was some of my earliest religious education. But what I learned wasn't about Jesus or the Bible, but about religion itself and what it can mean to people. I saw how important church was to Mima, how important her community was to her. She tried to never miss a Sunday, and I noticed that she knew everyone, and they knew her. I watched how intently she listened to the preacher as his voice rose and fell dramatically. Something important was happening here, and I was here for it. A lot has changed over the years, but when I'm around, I still like to take my grandma to her church, and I've learned a lot by sitting in those pews. So there's a sign somewhere in North Alabama. I don't know if anyone will get this, but I've seen it a few times now on various road trips, and it always kind of grabs my attention. It's a big white sign, and there's an image of what's supposed to be a devil on it. Kind of looks like a man covered in red paint with some horns. And it says, "Go to church or the devil will get you." This sign is, I think, the embodiment of what a lot of people think of when they think of religion in the South. The way it feels like it's everywhere, so ingrained in the culture that you almost can't look away. But of course, the people who made the sign are telling on themselves. Ideally, we participate in religious community because we want to, not because we need to be shamed or scared about what will happen if we don't. One of the reasons I'm in ministry is because I love learning about religion. I love to understand what people believe and why. And one of the most interesting case studies for this is a road trip in the South. Churches are everywhere, and I love looking at the different architecture, what kind of church it is. Definitely bonus points if I have never heard of it. Is it kept up? Are there cars out front? I wonder what it's like to worship there. Religion is integral to the culture of the South. I can remember my colleague, the Reverend Sam Title, talking last year about allowing people to look at us as people who make their homes here in the South, to see us for all that we are and all that we aren't. And I think that's real and true. I've felt for a long time that the South is kind of America laid bare, with all of its beauty and all of its problems exposed for all to see, not hidden under layers like in some other places. And I think that's why this question of the South is something that matters so much, that inspires think pieces from so many people who aren't from here, who haven't lived here. What I've often wished people knew is that it's not a monolith. It is not all older men in lifted pickup trucks and red hats. The reality is that those people live here, and they may be our neighbors or our uncles, which adds another snarl in our interconnected web. But the truth is, too, that they live other places. I know you all know this, but it needs to be said. The South is much more diverse than the dominant narrative would have us believe. It is filled with queer folks and leftist organizers and working people and Black activists working for a better South for all of us. There is a lot more here than meets the eye, but you have to want to see it, to be willing to look a little harder, to go a little deeper. It's important to say, too, that I say all of this with 1 foot in and 1 foot out of the South. I was born here. I lost my accent a long time ago, and I have roots here. I met my husband here. His family is from here. My family is from here. We don't choose where we live as a military family, and Shreveport wasn't exactly on the top of our lists. I hope I don't get in trouble for saying that, but if we could choose, we would still live in the South. And I've also lived a lot of my life in New England and in other places, and there's beauty there too, and there's things I've loved there too. This wideness of experience has given me perspective. But I knew even when I lived in New England that there were experiences I had that people there didn't quite understand. So I'm 100% invested in the flourishing of the South, of my family and the people I love. I have poured my blood, sweat, and tears into this place, and it has me by the heartstrings. And sometimes it feels like it saves me, and in the same breath, it can break my heart. Learning to live with that has been an exercise in humility. And it should be said, too, that the reason the South has spelled freedom for me and for my family has everything to do with whiteness and with privilege. There's no way around that, and it's completely legitimate for people with different experiences to feel differently. So when we talk about religion in the South, we're mostly referring to Protestant Christianity, mainline denominations like the Baptists in all their many, many forms, and the Methodists, eventually the African Methodist Episcopal Church, and later other movements like the charismatic Pentecostal traditions. So we'll go through some quick history. During the Second Great Awakening that spanned the 1790s through the 1840s, these Protestant denominations, many of them, sent out preachers to ride around the country and preach the gospel. It's where the idea of the itinerant preacher comes from. They would have tent revivals and featured moving and emotional preaching, and a lot of people were inspired by this message and converted to these kinds of Christianity. This is where a lot of people got religion, as they say. At this time, too, the slave trade, our country's original sin that reverberates throughout our history, was booming. And this Christianity that was preached at tent revivals and that so moved people was also used as a justification for slavery, that the servant should obey the master. The history is bloody. Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, who we heard from earlier, poet, Black woman, abolitionist, organizer, reminded us what a mockery slavery made of the Christian faith. But we must also understand and remember that Christianity was life-giving to many enslaved people. Enslaved people in the South had their own pastors, their own preachers, and the idea that there was a life after this one that included freedom, where there would be some kind of justice for all they had endured, was of paramount importance. James Cone, pioneer of Black liberation theology, explained this in his work, The Cross and the Lynching Tree. While the lynching tree symbolized white power and black death, the cross symbolizes divine power and black life God overcoming the power of sin and death. For African Americans, he writes, the image of Jesus hung on a tree to die powerfully grounded their faith that God was with them, even in the suffering of the lynching era. It's also important to say that religion in the South has long been associated with the religious right, and in many ways, that's fair. Here in Texas, so much of the time, our neighbors dominate the conversation around faith, and the term liberal religion can seem to many like an oxymoron. There are so many ways in which this is frustrating and alienating. The influence of the religious right has felt in so many ways, and especially during the Trump presidency, has been felt in so many ways, especially during the Trump presidency. And evangelical Christianity has become synonymous in a lot of ways with Christian nationalism. We've seen how dangerous this message is to our society. We've watched as this kind of ideology, especially through the pandemic, has been in opposition to the true teachings of Jesus. But we must not forget that the South has also been the birthplace of progressive religious activism, from the Poor People's Campaign to the movement for Black Lives. Liberating progressive activism on the basis of faith has always been here, and we must not lose sight of that. As Unitarian Universalists, this feels like a natural opening for us, as we certainly have something to say about a liberating faith, a faith that says that all people are worthy just as we are, and calls us to put that loving belief into action in our worlds. In the reading we heard earlier by the Reverend Karen Johnston, she writes, "Where beauty is hidden, reveal it." I hear that as our charge, our answer to the question, how will we live in this place as people who believe in liberation? And the answer is not an easy one. The answer is that we must seek, we must look deeper. We must work to reveal beauty where it may have been hidden before. But we do not work alone. This is the water in which we swim as Unitarian Universalists, no matter where we live. Our Unitarian and Universalist ancestors were Christian, and this double-edged sword of a violent and liberating history is ours to know and ours to understand. And though we like to talk about our abolitionist ancestors, I'd like to remind us, too, that not all of them were. And just the way we've been reminded about UU churches built from cotton money, we must understand that none of us, no matter where we live or die, is immune or exempt from feeling the impacts of this original sin. We also have a responsibility to try to understand the context in which we live, instead of remaining solely in our UU circles. The South is home to an intense, embodied faith. We have things like this sign, "Go to church or the devil will get you." We have snake handlers in the mountains. We have Pentecostals who speak in tongues. We have faith healers and holiness churches, and it's all very intense and embodied. Like the South itself, the volume is turned up on religion here. In this part of the country, too, we're more geographically isolated. People drive a long way for UU community sometimes, and people are more invested than in places where you have easy access. There's a level of caring and energy and appreciation, a level of faith that comes with being UU in the South that I love, and that others love too. The work we are doing is life-giving and so important. So I would say that to be UU here in the South is to have an intense kind of faith. Different maybe, but still intense. As UUs, we're really choosing faith over fear, to borrow a phrase from our evangelical neighbors. Our faith is maybe articulated differently and placed more in community and in one another than in any one God. But it's faith nonetheless, and maybe that's even more radical. To be UU anywhere is to be rooted in all of this complicated and beautiful and painful context, and still to choose each other again and again. So as we close this morning, let us remember that beauty tends to emerge in the places where we tend to and nurture it. And so how beautiful it is that we are here with this group of people to do the work of tending together. May it be so. Amen. I invite you to rise, either in body or in spirit, and join in singing our closing hymn, We'll Build a Land, number 121 in the gray hymnal.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come build a world where families and neighbors, united by love, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come build a world where families and neighbors, united by love, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land, building up ancient cities, raising up dauntless stations from old, restoring ruins of generations. Oh, we'll build a land of people so bold. Come build a world where families and neighbors, united by love, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come build a land where the mantles of praises resound from spirits once faint and once weak, where like oaks of righteousness stand her people. Oh, we'll build the land, my people we seek. Come build a world where families and neighbors, united by love, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
We extinguish this flame, but not our commitment to welcome radically, love boldly, grow spiritually, and serve courageously. This we do because we envision a beloved community filled with compassion, helping all to thrive in a just world.
So friends, as we go forth from our time of worship this morning, let us reveal beauty wherever we can. Go in peace.